Hi there, welcome to Crop Scouting class. We'll be recording a series of videos taking you through this summer's crop scouting course and trying to give you some insight into how to go out and scout crops accordingly, make proper stand counts, identify weeds, insect pressures, and different tillage practices, and a variety of other things that we may see out there. This introductory video, though, is going to give you a little bit of insight into how we're going to go about actually completing the process. One of the techniques that I like to use whenever out scouting my crops is I take about one stand count per every 10 acres. The field that we're going to start with initially today is just over a 40-acre field, so I'm going to take 4 stand counts. It's important whenever you go out and take your stand counts to do a population check. It's important to try and pick random sites within the field. We're very tempted, especially whenever we have spotty population conditions, we think, or spotty emergence, to only go out and check the areas that we think maybe don't have such a good stand count. Or if we feel like we planted a field that has a very good stand, we're also tempted to go out and only check the very good places. So I would encourage you to try and keep it as random as you can, so that you only stand count the locations in random to try and get a very good cross-section of what the field may look like. If you want to add a 5th stand count on a 45-acre field, I don't think there's any harm in that. But there's certainly not necessarily really a need to go out and do, let's say, 10 stand counts in a 40-acre field. You're going to certainly get more data, but that takes a long time to get across very many acres. Though while you're out here, certainly take a look for places that maybe you had drown out spots if we've had a lot of rain, or certainly apparent to this year, we've had some spots where there are locations that have potential frost damage when you get into the northern areas of our district. So it's important to check a lot of those. Maybe you've heard reports of potential armyworm damage and things of that nature. It's always good to check certain locations even for that might be more site specific. But in this technique I'm going to teach you, again, I'm going to take a 1 stand count for every 10 acres. Some of the tools that I'm going to use, I've got my trusty tape measure. I like to use a technique where I'll lay down 8 feet 9 inches of tape for a 30-inch row spacing. We want to count about 17.5 feet of row length. And so I lay down 8 feet 9 inches and then count on both sides of the tape. That way I'm counting 2 rows instead of just 1. If you want to lay down 17.5 feet of tape and count on 1 row, that's perfectly acceptable. We also have some poles that we'll be using later on in the semester to show you how to do some of that technique as well. That is kind of a measured pole technique. So you can lay down a certain length of poles and you can count within that area. Also, there's a technique in soybeans where you lay down a hula hoop. Also handy to have out whenever you go scouting is something to dig in the ground with. I didn't bring a little hand spade with me today, but a pocket knife will work. You may also use a screwdriver. That allows you to get in and actually dig in when you find locations that maybe there's not a kernel emerged or a seed emerged. You can check and see for emergence, stage of development, and things of that nature. So a few things on safety. Make sure that you're checking the field. You certainly don't want to be really in a field that's been sprayed within the last 24 hours if you can avoid it, just to be safe from any kind of chemical exposure that you may be into. Always pay attention to where you're walking. You don't want to step into a chuck hole of some kind and turn an ankle or break a foot, and any wildlife that might be out in the area. So keep safety in mind. Wear sunscreen. Whenever it's warm, carry bottles of water and stay properly hydrated. I generally like to scout in the morning whenever it's going to be warm. That way I can get it done before it gets too hot. So with that being said, let's get to work and do some scouting. Well, here we are. We've got our tape laid out here again, 8 feet 9 inches. I'm going to count the row that's right adjacent to the tape here, and then I'm going to count the row that is on the opposite side here, just to my left. Again, as we go through this procedure, I'm just going to simply count each plant that is emerged and up, and I'm going to be observing this stage of growth here, and so that we can identify, if we are reporting back to a producer, what stage of growth their crop is in. I'm going to be observing crop health, and soil conditions and things of that nature to kind of come up with an emergence here. This corn was planted just about 3 weeks ago. It is a Pioneer variety, and this is a variety that is one of my cornfields. Planted in okay soil conditions. Was just a tad on the mucky side probably for me whenever I planted it, but we had the opportunity to get the corn planted, and as many of you know, you take that opportunity when you get the chance. This stage of emergence, this is V1 corn, past the emergent stage, which would be just in the whorl yet, or just have poked through. So we have a couple leaves emerged, and so let's go ahead and get you a stand. All right, here we are fixing to take as a stand count. I want you to observe a few things here as we go along. Look at leaf health, singulation, which is plant spacing and location of plants. That kind of tells you a little bit about planter performance. And so as we go along here, I'm going to try and stay close down to the plant so that you can count along with me. So we can kind of come up with a stand count together here in our first one. So here's one. Actually, I have two plants right close together here. That would be a singulation problem. So there are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Here's another two that I have a little bit too close together. 16, 17. I'm going to follow straight across here to my adjacent row. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, another singulation problem, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Now, just to, again, kind of review, we would take that 34 number and multiply it by 1,000. That's going to give us a 34,000 stand count. Actually, my planter was set right at 34,000. Now, one of the things that sometimes is of discussion is, what do you do with those plants that are doubled up? The skips and doubles that you occasionally had. And I generally will count only one of those most of the time. I counted both of them this time, but we had a couple, about 3 instances here where we had doubles. You're probably not going to get a really good ear off of both of those, so I tend to only count one of those. So let's subtract, let's say 3 for this area. That would get us down to 31,000 population. And again, my target was 34,000. We're well above 90% emergence. I would be happy with this stand. Now, I like to track these things on my phone. I'll record the stand count for each location on my phone in my notes. You might like to take a clipboard and a piece of paper and pencil out and record your locations in order to report back fully in terms of to the producer or your own farm what your stand count in each location was. So there's one stand count. Let's get on to the next one. Hey, here we are at our second scouting location. I've got my tape already laid out on the ground. One of the things that I like to look at whenever I'm out scouting a field is, again, just generally looking across the field for general observances on what I see in terms of stand and population, insect pressure, weed pressure. We only have just a few things out here, a little bit of a small bit of goldenrod that apparently escaped the tillage process, and corn. This field was sprayed right afterwards, almost directly after I finished planting. But at this point, the weed pressure seems to be fairly good under control. I do see a few grasses occasionally coming here, and we'll have to keep an eye on those as we go through the season here to see if our residual chemical will take care of that, or if we'll have to come back with a second spray pass. At this point, I don't see any indication of insect pressure in terms of where we're at currently in the field. it's always really good to look what's adjacent to the field to see what may cause pressure for you. Kind of behind me, you may see in the camera here is a little area of timber. Occasionally you'll get some wire worms or army worms that may move out of that. You'll see when we get to the east side of the field, there's a CRP area that's heavy in grass, and will tend to see occasionally whenever you get the army worm or wire worm pressure next to grass or pasture areas that can be feeding on roots and feeding on small emerging plants. That's a good spot to stop and scout for those. It takes a fairly large amount of damage to cause economic yield loss occasionally, for the most part. Now, army worms can certainly get at it and cause you a rather large problem. Wire worms, occasionally you have to pay attention to where those might be. To our north here is a field that's planted to corn, so nothing that I really have to worry about. To my left, which is west, is a field that's been tilled and is being prepared to go to soybeans at this point in time. So very little worry about insect pressure movement from that field to this one, and not a wheat field really in sight here. So certainly nothing to worry about there. So let's get it at our next stand count. Okay, on to our next count here. Let's get down and see what we have here for a population. We have 1, 2, 3. That one's just coming. Looks a little funky, but we'll go ahead and count him at this point in time. Again, 4, 5, but I'm only going to count one of those because I bet only one of those is going to make a decent ear, maybe neither one. So we'll go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 on this side of the tape. Let's come head to the other side. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and 33 just sneaks in there. So again, as we kind of observe this this area of the spot that we just chose to scout, and kind of, if I pan around here, you see a fairly decent stand. Again, that would be right on our stand population target. So we would call this pretty much 100% emergence. As I look at the plants, again, V1 stage, all seem to be very healthy. Got a few bleached out spots, and that may be due to just a tad bit of cold weather, a little bit of chlorosis, as we've had kind of a difficult time finding any heat, and with a lot of rain pressure, you see a lot of cornfields that look a little bit yellow, and until they hit that band of nitrogen down there, when you put down anhydrous or whatever N fertilizer you used, until they hit that band of fertilizer, they're probably going to stay a little bit yellow. And then as we get into the 70s and 80s with some temperature, then you'll see it start to green up and really take off, and we're kind of on the cusp of that right here. This field has changed color quite a bit here just in the last few days. So that's stand number 2, stand count number 2. So we have one count of 31, one count of 33. We seem to be right on track. Let's see what the next one has for us. Okay, here we are in our third location. I'm towards the north end of the field here now, and in a soil area that's quite a bit more clay soil. It's kind of a clay knobby spot. I expect, and historically, if you look at my stands and yields kind of in this area, I expect for my stand to be a little bit more spotty here, and I think you'll probably find that as we go to do our count. So let's jump in here and see what our count looks like in this location, and try and make some comments on it. Okay, a little bit difficult to see here. My line actually only catches one of these two plants, so we're going to count 1, and then obviously you see a skip here. 2, 3, 4. Here's one just coming. We'll talk about that one in a second. 5, and then you see a pretty good skip through this area here. 6, 7, 8. Coming to the other side of the tape here. 9, 10, 11. Here's one that I already dug and kind of looked for. We're going to count him. 12, 13, 14. Here's one just emerging. 15. I skipped one. There's one just poking through.
and we'll count him at 16. Here's another one just near that dirt clod. Let me get down close enough to him. 18. Didn't find one there. 19, 20. Another skip. 21, 22, and 23. Again, if we kind of go and look at an average, then take 23 times 1,000, you'll find then that we have an average stand for this area of 23,000. So the reason we count some of these, again, this guy here was just kind of like one of the prior ones, kind of this one right next to the neighbor here that is just emerging. Same with this one right here. Again, a little bit tighter soil location. Depending on who you talk to, but most agronomists will agree that if you see some healthy tissue coming and the seedling looks healthy, that plant is probably going to make it, especially once we get some heat here too. Is it delayed? Yes. If I pull this guy right out of the ground and kind of show you, you see a good what appears to be a good healthy seedling. The taproot is coming. The shoot is starting to get almost emerged through the soil line. This one was just below the soil line, so he'll probably make it, especially here with the weather this week. We're looking at some more heat. He'll probably get through. I would say the same for this guy next to him, although he looks in a little bit tougher condition. That's why you would come back later and see if that guy comes along and so forth. But certainly in this area, we've got some skips. Here's one right here, a pretty sizable skip in this area between plants where I don't have anything emerged. And so that would cause me for some concern to kind of see further along as this stand develops. Is it worth destroying the stand or patching in at this point in time? I would say not necessarily from the information I have right now. This area typically will have a much lower emergence percentage or stand count percentage than what I would love to see in the rest of the field, or like I see in the rest of the field. But is it worth destroying this part of the stand in order to try and get a better stand at this point in time? That's a decision that you have to make as a manager. I'm probably going to leave it sit for a little while, especially since we have rain coming, to just kind of see how this one comes along and see what opportunity I may have here in another week or so. All right, that's the third stand count. Okay, here we are in our fourth and final kind of randomly selected scouting location, kind of on a side hill here. I always try and be at least one planter pass if I'm doing it, at least one planter pass on either side of the last location. I'm probably about 3 planter passes to the east of my location prior, and also on the south side of the field. This field isn't square by any means. It's a really odd shape, but in a square field, it's nice to just kind of zigzag from one side of the field to the other in order to kind of randomly select, so that you get different soil types, you get different passes of the planter and so forth, so that and soil conditions, so that you get a good really good feel for how your planter performed and how your stand really looks. So let's get to counting here on our final scouting location, and then we'll wrap this field up and kind of give you some baseline numbers and observations from what we see. All right, let's get to our count here. Get inside of our tape measure line and let's count these here. It's kind of difficult to see the contrast, but we'll try and get you counting along here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That guy's kind of smashed. I'm not sure whether he's gonna make it. We'll count him. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. This guy right here is just outside my counting range. Come across 17, 18, 19, got a skip here, 20, 21. Got some doubles here, so we'll count one of those. So 22, 23, 24, again, got a double. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So this stand count would get you a population of 30. If I pan around here, there are 30,000. if I pan around here, this area looks to be pretty good. But one of the things that I would encourage you to think about is, again, it's different when you get out here in the field. You can't see skips and doubles from the pickup truck. So we got a 30,000 count in this location. We'll wrap up this Field Scout from this first cornfield here in a little bit. All right, let's wrap up our scouting report here for this field, the first field of corn that we're scouting for this class here this summer. Again, this was a Pioneer variety, 112-day corn, 1257 if you're really curious to know which one that is. Again, stage of development V1. If we take our stand counts, the 4 of them that we did complete together, our first count, if you remember, was 31,000, our second count at 33,000, our third count at 23,000, and then our final count at 30,000. If you add all those together and then divide by the 4 counts that we did, we get an average stand count of 29,250. If we divide that by our 34,000 target, actually my planter reported planting at about 33.6. We're somewhere around an 86 or 87% population of target at this point in time. Now, most feel that these stands are going to get a little bit better. We've had very few days in the 70 degrees out here, and so therefore some of the kernels that you don't see emerged, if you dig them, there's nothing that is rotten, and that would cause you for some concern. I don't see any plants here that look really stressed. Some of them are picking up more green color, so I feel like this stand probably will get better. Is it ideal? No. Is it worth tearing up? Not for me at this point in time, so we'll continue to go with it. Just a little bit of information on how this field from a tillage management was prepared. We came in and did a tillage pass with our field cultivator. It's a John Deere model. Then my agronomy company came in and applied my anhydrous. They like to go basically a full rate right up front. And so that was applied, and then the finished tillage pass was with our Great Plains TurboMax tool. That tool is new to us this year, and I'll tell you, we're a little bit unsure of how that thing works yet in order to do a finished pass. I don't necessarily like my cornfield soils to be prepared super fine. I know some of you do and some of you don't. We're not a no-till corn farm at this point in time. So we do at least a moderate amount of tillage. I would like to see this soil probably just a touch finer and a little bit less lumpy. That's one thing I would change about it. But again, it's not over-tilled so that it makes it really tight. So hopefully, as we kind of wrap up this area, I don't see really any insect pressure. I don't see a lot of weed pressure coming along as we've gone through any of our scouting areas. There is a few areas where I see a little bit of grass pressure that you would have to be really concerned about with regard to competition for corn, that we'll keep our eye on as we see things develop. There's an occasional broadleaf here or there, but at this point in time, nothing that I'm really super concerned about with regard to chemical performance. So that wraps up our first field of scouting, and hopefully you enjoyed it and picked up a few things. I know it's a little bit difficult to see the contrast between the soil and the plant at this point in time in stage of development, but as we go through the class into the summertime, you'll be able to see those contrasts a little bit more, and we want to kind of track fields as we go along. Thanks for tuning in.